So now we're going to look at the report that you'll get back when you participate in benchmarking. This is where the real magic happens, and this is where you find some of the really great detail that will really pinpoint where you can make those improvements and efficiencies that are going to result in more profitability for yourselves. So the report is broken down, it's broken down into two halves. The first half is very graphical and gives you a good representation, and then the second half, the appendix, is where all the detail and the numbers are. We'll show you that in just a minute. Each participating grower receives one of these reports, and to actually get a consultant to come in to do this for you would cost a lot of money normally. We don't just give you the report and then wish you all the best. We also come and give you a one-to-one session so you really understand it and we really drive out and identify those improvements. The report contains key business information and financial comparisons and performance ratios. This is where we really get into the detail. All the participating growers from year one have found this super valuable. So Paul now is going to take us through what are some of those graphs and what do they mean.
Thanks, Bryn. Yeah, first of all, what we want to try and do for you in your report is pretty much set out how we'd like to look at your business as a whole. So the first part of the business is looking at profitability. A very simple graphical of how much income did you make, what were the expenses, and pretty much those broken down into operating expenses, and then overhead costs of depreciation, finance and tax. So this gives you an operating profit before tax and a return on capital number. So if we go from there to the next slide, we actually then look at the breakdown of what the operating expenses are. So this is very important because it's okay, for the expenses in the business, what are operating costs? And then what are the other overheads in the business? Finance and leasing, wages and management and depreciation. And how much surplus is hopefully falling out the bottom. From there, in that simplistic form, we can then break that down from the operating costs into what they actually are. So this helps drill down from one step to the other, from a profit level down to operating expenses level, then what are the operating expenses and the key areas that you need to focus on. Obviously these are made up numbers, but what you can see is how we've actually put in the value or the cost in dollar terms, but also in a percentage terms. So that can actually help you look at the business a lot harder. From this area, what we'd like to do is pictorially show you how this actually looks in the farm business. So this is actually a business health check in a way. So red meaning obviously not so good, always into the orange, and then into the green is where we'd like you to be. So this page itself looks at the operating performance of the business. So how is your operating efficiency? How does that translate to return on capital? And then what are some of the key ratios? Machinery, finance and leasing, and wages. So that gives you a good idea of the health check of the business from an operating point of view. But that's not all in the business. We need to look at the financing and capability. So our next slide shows how the actual financial basis of the business, the strength in the balance sheet of the business looks. So that's a loan to value ratio, a very important ratio that the financial industry looks at, the banks. And then into equity. So how strong is the business in terms of being able to provide for each family unit, but also in terms of how it can withstand a shock like we talked about before. So is it, we like to see the businesses in the green here. That gives you an overall picture of how the business looks from a financial strength and balance sheet strength point of view. From that gives you the high level, and from there we then like to look at how things are broken down into vegetable lines. So this easily gives you a pictorial of vegetable income, but then also vegetable percentage of operating expenses. So these are on a percentage basis, and very quickly the grower can see, well, what does my income look like for each vegetable line, and what are my expenses?
And where do all the expenses go?
Yeah. So that's now starting to break down the report into more detailed level of vegetable lines. So then if we look at from percentage of income to operating expenses, where that goes to, we actually look at per vegetable, what are the profits actually being received in that line per veg, and what are the operating costs. So this is now starting to see, okay, this is how much money I make out of a vegetable line, this is how much money it cost me to make it, what is the money that falls out the bottom. So we're starting to actually show you, drill down into the business where you can start asking questions and say, well, is this business, this is a very, very good business, vegetable line, for example, it does take higher costs, am I still making some money?
And this is done by per hectare, so you can compare veg against veg within your own enterprise.
Most definitely, and that's the really good thing about doing things on a per hectare basis, is that you can make that comparison straight between each other. So if we go to the next slide, I think this is the next step now, is to actually where do you sit with your variable costs and wages and fixed costs in terms of industry. So here you can see a breakdown of your result in the stripy line, and then the industry average in the full line. So a very quick and clear idea of actually where your business sits, and the ability to say, well, okay, why am I a lot higher in this example for chemicals? Is that a coding issue in my software, or is it something that we have been spending a lot more money on in chemicals? So it gives you a very quick pictorial of where you sit.
Gets there really quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And wages is the same. And if we move on to fixed costs, the fixed costs graph shows exactly the same thing. So this is the overhead or the fixed costs in the business that are there every day you get out of bed. Where do I sit along the industry averages with that? From there, the next point of view, what we want to look at after that is we go into an appendix. So
This is that second half.
that's
of
the
the
second
report.
half of the report.
This is really the place for number crunches.
That's right. This is the supporting data. So you've got a really good picture now up to this point of where the business is at, how it operates, what its financial balance strength is. Then this is going into the levels of key business ratios. If we move on to the next slide, it will show you your assets and liabilities. And one of the key things about this is you see in this coding scale here is that you've got your result, and then you've got the industry average and the top 25%. So very quickly you can compare, and then you can start asking yourself questions. Is that about where I farm? Is that about the type of farming that I'm doing? But then from the assets and liabilities, we then move into the next side of it, which is your profit and loss management statement. So this is about what income do I make, what cost do I have in the business to make that. And again, it compares you to the average of the industry and the top 25%. Not only have we done that, there looks like a lot of lines in this graph, but what's really important is that you can compare yourself as a percentage of income and a percentage of operating costs to the industry and the top 25%. So that actually then gives you a comparison. It doesn't matter what you farm. It's actually looking at the percentage that you actually make or spend on a certain area of the business against the average and the best. So that's about it in a nutshell, Bryn. I mean, there's a lot of numbers in there, but certainly it's where our initial delivery of reports is where a lot of growers are interested in focusing the numbers and actually comparing themselves and what they can do.
So as you can see, there's a lot of information in there, and it's very comprehensive. And all of this you get for free by participating in the benchmarking project. So if you would like to get into this level of detail so you can truly understand what's going on in your business so you can project it forwards, then click on the link below and let's have you involved.